Hi, this is Jason from jasonscustoms.com, and today I'm going to go over the new Mark 30 ADCAP SuperGun. For those of you who are familiar with my work, you'll know that this isn't a new SuperGun because I've offered this for a long time. There has been some revisions and some minor changes to the overall design and functionality of it, and that's really why I wanted to create this video and get it out there. You'll notice that the new SuperGun is just a little bit taller than the originals. If you have one of the originals, it clocks in at about 2 inches tall. This one is 2.5 inches tall, and that lets me do some interesting things that I wasn't able to do with the previous iteration of the ADCAP. Specifically, it allows me to create this removable front panel for the controller ports. Stock, it's going to come with these DB15 ports because they're the most common and used ports on SuperGuns today. It allows you to hook up pretty much any do-it-yourself controller without any additional PCBs. It's the most economical way to build a fight stick or arcade stick to use with a SuperGun. Additionally, the DB15 ports will allow the use of a NEO-GEO arcade stick or one of their NEO-GEO CD pads with the SuperGun if you already have one. The controller ports still feature the standard DB15 pinout, so all of your existing fight sticks will still work with the Mark 30 ADCAP if you've had it working with a previous ADCAP. As we go over the front features of the ADCAP, I'm going to point out a couple things that are very important. First, you have your power on and off switch. This controls the AC power, or the power coming from the wall into the SuperGun. This is important because it's going to secure power to your SuperGun and make sure that you're not just draining electricity from the wall unnecessarily. The next is this little gray knob here. This actually is connected to a potentiometer that is soldered onto the power supply. Basically, these power supplies are adjustable. Each JAMMA board in arcade system uses a different amount of current because of the technology used in each of them. For example, a Capcom CPS2 system may use more current than a Capcom CPS1 system because it has additional processors for the improved graphics and sound, etc. When you apply an additional load or current onto the power supply, what's going to happen is the voltage on that rail is going to drop, and you have to adjust it so that the board still works properly. With the ADCAP in all arcade systems, 5 volts is the most important run in the arcade cabinet or the SuperGun because that is the heavy lifter, if you will, in the power supply. So as you hook up the different boards, this knob will help you adjust the 5 volt supply to keep it right at 5 volts. Instead of hooking up a multimeter so you understand where the 5 volts rail currently sits, we've included this digital multimeter here that's plugged into the power supply on the SuperGun, and that's monitoring the 5 volt rail throughout the entire system. So when you plug your board in and you turn your ADCAP on, if that is below 5.0, you can just twist the knob to the right and it will raise the voltage. If it is actually lower than 5 or higher than 5 volts, excuse me, you can turn it to the left and lower it back down. It's very important that you keep that at 5 volts, and that's why I've included both the adjust knob and the digital gauge on the front for easy use. Next, you'll notice I've got a red, a green, and a blue knob here. That's going to control the color intensity of the red, green, and blue output of the arcade board. The way this all works is the video comes from the arcade board into the SuperGun. It passes through these potentiometers and then to a JROC video encoder. By adjusting these down, you're actually lowering the brightness of each of these guns, which will allow you to adjust the picture on the screen in case it isn't quite right or set to your liking. Next, as we move over, you're going to see there's a 3-position switch here. There's down, middle, and up. That switch is actually pretty important when it comes to the audio output of your arcade system. The CPS2 and most JAMMA systems that you're going to use feature JAMMA mono sound, which means there's only one speaker, if you will, of audio that comes out. So in most modern televisions and most modern arcade consoles or video game consoles, they use stereo output, but the older stuff used a mono output. So what this does is it allows you to set it to mono simulated stereo or actually stereo for some of the later stuff like NEO-GEO's multi-video system, or MVS. In the down position, it's going to take that one line of audio and actually split it to both left and right audio channels on the back of the SuperGun, so you have a simulated stereo sound. I use that term loosely because it's really just the same signal passed to both left and right speakers on your TV. In the middle position, it will actually only put out over the left channel on the back of the SuperGun, so you'd only hear sound out of the one speaker on your TV. I don't necessarily recommend using that, but that option's there if you may get interference or something like that that you're trying to figure out with your TV. Finally, in the up position, that is your MVS stereo. NEO-GEO was actually pretty smart, and they ended up using a grounded audio type setup where the speakers were grounded to the ground system in the DC end of the arcade cabinet, and then the positive connection of the speakers were hooked up to the JAMMA harness where the audio pins were. Now, if you hook up an MVS system and you don't have this in the up position, you could end up shorting one speaker directly to ground, and that would be bad. So we've put this switch in for safety as well as to maximize your use with this ADCAP. Next, we've got the service and the test switch. Momentary press on the service will normally just add a coin without incrementing the coin counter in the arcade cabinet. And then the test was the test menu, so that you can go in and set game settings like difficulty, how many credits it takes to run, or a free play mode. Finally, as we shift over to the far right here, you're going to notice there's two more buttons. These are your coin 1 and coin 2 buttons. That simulates coin insertion for the game. And then your controller ports that we've already discussed. We've gone ahead and zoomed in to the top of the SuperGun, and you'll see that we've got some vent holes here. If you look close, you can see the power supply underneath it. That's a HAP Pro Power 130 watt power supply, more than enough power for any of your arcade cabinet needs built into the SuperGun. So basically, this allows the heat from the AC to DC conversion that power supply is doing to escape from the enclosure without the use of any fans or anything like that. It's called passive cooling. I have run one of these for about 15 hours when I was at a local event, and you could touch the top of this and it wasn't hot. So this is a very effective and efficient means to cool the power supply. The placement is perfect because it's right over one of the biggest transformers in the power supply, so it's a very good way to keep the SuperGun cool. As we explore the back of the SuperGun, you'll notice that there's nothing for you to press, nothing for you to switch, nothing for you to mess with once the SuperGun's on. I wanted to make sure that everything was accessible to the SuperGun from the front because I wanted you to think of this like any other thing that you'd put in your entertainment center. As we go from left to right, you'll see we have a full gambit of features here that we're going to discuss, starting with the JAMMA connection. Right here is where you would plug an extension cable in, and then it would plug into your arcade board. I've gone ahead and changed the design of the ADCAP to support this because I was worried that over time the hole with the bushing and the wires going through it would eventually give way, and the stresses on the wires could potentially become great, and they could sever or get damaged and cause shorts and potential problems. That would facilitate a much more complex repair than if we were able to just unplug the JAMMA extension, plug a new one in. Next, we have a kick harness connection here. This is going to provide buttons 4, 5, and 6 for both players 1 and 2 to your JAMMA boards that are considered JAMMA Plus. When I say JAMMA Plus, I'm thinking of games that require more than 3 buttons. This is most of your fighting games and even some of your later non-fighting games that use different buttons for power-ups and such. An interesting thing here that's important to note is this JAMMA connection here actually shares a couple connections with the kick harness, specifically buttons 4 and 5 for both player 1 and 2. Because we've done this, this makes this port compatible with some of the JVS IOs made by Sega, where buttons 1 through 5 went through a JAMMA type connection, and then you only had to kick harness button 6 for each player. As well as NEO-GEO that used 4 buttons, and that was all over the JAMMA harness. You can plug this in with the extension harness included to your AES system, or excuse me, your MVS system, and it'll work perfectly. No kick harness needed. As we move to the right, you're going to see all our video outputs. It's important to note here you have a lot of options here. You have your component video, which is as close to RGB video you can get without actually being RGB. You've got your composite video here, which is the lowest quality, lowest resolution video your TV may or may not support still. Next, we have an S-video connection here, which is a step up from composite video. It actually looks very good on CRTs and even some LCDs. And then finally we have the 8-pin mini DIN connection here, the output of which is exactly set up to match the Framemeister's XRGB Mini. So you can use a simple 8-pin mini DIN connection to make your SuperGun work with your Framemeister if you so have it. Finally, you'll notice we've got two audio jacks here, a left and a right. That is taking the audio from the JAMMA board and attenuating it down to a preamp level so that you can safely plug your SuperGun into your TV and you don't have to worry about blowing your speakers out due to a very loud speaker condition. Keep in mind, JAMMA requires no audio amplification because the board has an onboard amplifier. So that means you can hook a speaker directly up to the audio output on the board and it will work. That is great for an arcade cabinet because it's less boards inside, but it is very bad for a TV because your TV has an amplifier built in. So think about turning your TV all the way up and then amplifying that signal again and how loud that would be and what kind of damage it could do to the cones of the televisions. Most of the time it permanently damages the TV and you can't use it anymore or repair it. So we've gone ahead and made sure you can't do that by attenuating the audio signal down. Finally, we have a standard AC adapter inlet as well as a standard arcade fuse here just in case you run into an overcurrent situation. I'd rather the fuse blow than the power supply, and I think you would as well. It protects your JAMMA boards as well as the internal circuitry of your SuperGun. Hooking up your new SuperGun is very easy. Included with every purchase is going to be one of these extension cables, as well as a power cable that you can actually see over here in the corner, and your actual SuperGun here. For an additional cost, we'll go ahead and include a SuperGun kick harness adapter. You'll notice it's actually in two pieces. It can be disconnected here, which makes a good tight fit. So you have two pieces. One part here that plugs into the SuperGun itself, allowing you a lot of options for kick harnesses, and then this part here, which is a CPS2 kick harness and works on the CPS2 or CPS3 hardware for additional button support. By doing it this way, we're able to make these ends here for a lot cheaper and sell them at a much cheaper cost. Plus, it allows, if one of these parts fails for any reason, we can replace it much easier and quicker than if we had to make a whole one. And it would make sure that all your other kick harnesses would work if you needed to use them and one of these failed. Additionally, the cool thing about this is the way this DB9 to Molex connector is set up. If you have any of Bob Roberts or some of the other major manufacturers' kick harnesses, this will work with it because we've designed this pinout in these wire systems to be the exact same as theirs, just for convenience sake. So let's go ahead and put our kick harness back together. Easy. And let's go ahead and hook up the SuperGun. The first thing you're going to notice is there's a notch in the fingerboard here. In the newest version of the ADCAP, not seen here, the JAMMA connection back here actually has a key molded in, so you can only insert this one possible way. In this current version, we don't have that. The connectors just came in recently, so these boards were made before they came in. So if you have a system like this where there's no molded in key, this key is going to go closest to this DB9 connection. So we're going to go ahead and plug this in like that. Easy fit here. And then we're going to go ahead and plug in our kick harness here. And then we're going to go ahead and set this up and plug the cables into the arcade board as well, like so. Alright, next we're going to go ahead and hook up the rest of the cable connections here. I've got these pre-staged in my normal setup because I'm always working on SuperGuns and testing them out. So we'll just plug the component video cables in first. Let's see here. Go ahead and, I think this is the one that's hooked up to the arcade monitor in a box I built. So we'll try that one. If not, it's hooked up to a Framemeister, which is hooked up to the TV over HDMI. Okay, we'll get the audio cables plugged in here, no problems, and the S-video cable as well, so we can cycle through all the video and show that. And finally, last but not least, the power cable. Alright, normally you wouldn't have all those video inputs or outputs, excuse me, hooked up, but in our case, for the sake of this video, I just want to show them all connected real easy. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and hook up this Panzer fight stick just up to controller port number 1. Excuse the mess, I've bought these really long cables, and they're just crazy all over the place. Alright, so now we got the SuperGun set up. We're going to go ahead and shift camera views so that we can see the televisions and show what this thing can do. Alright, now that we've got the camera readjusted and we've got everything plugged in, let's go ahead and turn this on so we can see what this looks like. First things first, we're going to check our voltage. It's at 4.99. That's very close, within range of the meter, so that's great. And it looks like we've got the arcade monitor over here on the left that looks a little washed out in the video, as well as the CRT, the Sony Wega Trinitron here on the right. We're going to go ahead and let this come up. You can hear the audio. What you're seeing is, again, straight RGB here on the left, and not Capcom, thank you CPS2, the component video here on the right. Alright, so we can hear the audio fine, so let's go ahead and turn this down. Alright, you can also hear the awesome CPS2 hum, because they used the loudest fans known to man in their hardware, which was probably fine in an arcade because it was loud anyways. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get in front of the camera and go ahead and show you some of the features of the SuperGun in action. Again, we've got the red, green, and blue adjusts, and we'll turn those all the way up, and that's what the video looks like on both. And then finally, as you notice, we've turned this to the left, and you'll notice that red starts to go away. What that's doing is actually decreasing the brightness of the red gun as you turn it to the left. And if you do that same with the green, all of a sudden you're left with blue. And then finally, if you do the same thing with blue, you'll notice you have no video because you've attenuated out all of the color. So let's go ahead and put those all the way back up. Most of the time, leaving them in the full right position is perfect, but your TVs may be older, different, whatever, so you'll need to change those to your liking. Alright, I'm not going to use anything on this knob because you'll notice it's settled right in at 5. As the hardware warms up, you may have to tweak this a little bit, but typically, once you get it set close, you're good. Here's the audio switch we discussed before. In the down position, I can hear audio out of left and right speaker. In the middle position, only left speaker. And we're not going to put it in the up position because it won't do anything with a JAMMA. Next, if we hit the service button, like I said before, it's going to add credits, but we're going to go into this test menu, and then you can see that everything works in here. This is a good way to check that your controller was wired up properly and make sure everything's working on the system itself. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. Each game is going to have a different setup, so it's not important to cover in the video here other than that you can get in the test menu from the SuperGun easy. So we'll go ahead and exit out and let the game come back alive.